Hello, welcome everyone. This is another Business as Mission episode, and I'm Nelson Okona. And we want to discuss today's session in light of what is happening in Nigeria. Nigeria is faced with a lot of challenges, and I will just go straight to the point. This episode is designed for the BAM practitioner, the person that believes that he has been called of God to create value in the marketplace. This is for you. Now, it's good to start by asking ourselves, where are we as a nation? The data before you basically shows us a lot. One, it shows us that over time, this data shows the Nigeria's trade over the past 10 years, 2012 to 2022. It shows that over time, our oil imports have not grown as much, by just about 1% in dollar terms. In naira terms, about 12%, but in dollar terms, just about 1%. Non-oil imports, less minus 1%. It also shows that our let me give you perspective now. Our oil exports have declined by 5% year on year over a 10-year period, and that our non-oil exports have also not grown as much, 2% in dollar terms. Don't mind the naira terms, but dollar terms is more reflective of reality. And generally, our total export have declined by 5%. So theoretically, in principle, we're not earning more. Now, to give perspective, we'll put that data of our imports and put our GDP of our manufacturing sector, just to give an idea that we import $27 million, so $27 billion rather. Sorry, 27 trillion naira worth of goods in 2022, which is similar to the GDP of the manufacturing sector. Just to give you perspective, that the total import in 2022 is as big as the total GDP of Nigeria's domestic manufacturing sector. That says a lot. Now, if you take a look at our balance of trade, you could see that even though the oil balance of trade is generally positive 41 billion, our non-oil balance of trade is negative about 31 billion. So essentially, Nigeria's major export is oil and accounts for 54 billion on the average over a 10-year period, and our exports we're importing everything else, and even that export of oil is declining by 5% year on year. So the reason why I thought to start with that data set is to clarify that it's not complex. What is happening to us as a nation is not complex. We are simply not making enough dollars to meet our demand as a population. So you could imagine how many persons that have been born in the last 10 years, 2012 to 2022, and these individuals would have to, be fed some imported formula will have to be fed. They have to use Pampers, they have to use imported products. So the growing demand for imported products, based simply because we are just getting huge, is not matched with a corresponding supply of forex. Rather, it is actually declining. Now, that data also shows you that our diaspora remittance over the past 12 years, 10 years, 2022, was just about 20 billion, and it is not necessarily rising as much as our population growth rate. Even though 2023 we have a significant bump in our diaspora remittance. So the sum of our challenges that we are growing in population, we are not earning as much forex as we ought to, and our manufacturing base is not growing sufficiently to meet our domestic needs, or to even to export, because we're just exporting about $5 billion of non-oil exports, and this sector has grown by only 2% over the past 10 years. That is quite abysmal. If you compare us with other growing economies, we are in a bad shape. So because of that, when the government chose to open up the dollar to free market forces, it slumped and went pretty bad, and there's no guarantee that things are going to get better. Now, that is the background. The question now is, what is our responsibility as a bank practitioner? What are you supposed to do about this? That is the real question, which is the point of this particular video, to ask if you have a responsibility, and what are those responsibilities. Now, the second set of data to show us is that the federal government's debt obligations are also rising. As you can see from data in front of you, 2021 debt service was about 2 billion, 2022 about 2.56, 2023 are projecting about 4.3 billion, 2024 2022 was about $2.1 billion foreign. 2022 was 2.4, 2023 about 3.4, 2024 about $4.5 billion. And you can see the debt stock as at Q3 2023. So we're owing about $41 billion in debt, which is more than our reserves. And we have about 50 trillion naira in debt. These debt are different. So in other words, the foreign debt, of course, is different from domestic debt. If you add both of them together, that gives you a fair idea of our debt. That is FG. This doesn't cover the debt of the subnationals, that is the state government. So, but the point to note is not just the size of the debt, but the demand for debt services. In other words, we need to get 4.5 billion to service this debt. And we already have a declining foreign exchange that we're earning based on the drop in the crude earnings, and we're not growing as much. So, and our demand for dollar is increasing in addition to the domestic demand. Now, the other confounding factors that are making this relatively bad, one of them is that the households, you and I, because of the fact that there's massive inflation, crazy inflation, we're also demanding for dollars as a store of value. So if someone, so as this joke that if somebody's owing you 250,000 naira as at, let's say 3 months ago, if you give the person maybe if you give the person the dollar at when it was 1,000 naira, you could basically say, hold this $200, it will soon complete. It's just a matter of time. So dollar became a preferred source of storage of value. So because of that, there's increasing demand for the dollar, because everybody now wants the dollar. So there's increasing demand for the dollar. And then secondly, there's insecurity which have prevailed over the past 8 to 9 years. And this has affected the capacity of rural actors to produce. The agriculture has been decimated. So we are having food inflation in addition to the forex-induced inflation. Now, our manufacturing base is not competitive. We are not exporting. $5.4 billion is peanuts. To give you perspective, China is doing about $1 trillion worth of exports. So China is just about 5 to 6 times our population. So we should be doing about 200. If you want to use that ratio to compare, we should be doing at least twice, at least 4 times what we're doing in exports, and they're exporting finished goods, not crude oil like we are. So the point is that we are at least 4 times, by a factor of 4 below what we should be producing as industrially, and even everything cumulatively. So our non-oil exports should at least be 150 billion, but it's about 5 billion. So we are 30 times away from the destination for non-oil export, because just as a crude, you cannot increase crude above a particular threshold. The largest Nigeria ever exported in crude was about 70-something billion dollars. So even at the 50 billion, we are not too far from our maximum capacity. So that tells us a lot that the solution must come from the manufacturing base. The crude oil cannot meet our forex need based on our population. So you could do a simple arithmetic, get other countries of similar population and check their trade volumes. That can give you an idea of if we are doing well or not. Of course, the timing of the open market policy, some can argue if the timing of that open market policy was right or wrong, but this is where we are. And the purpose of this conversation this morning is to ask, what are you going to do about it? What is your challenge? What is your responsibility, if any, in the midst of all this development? Now, there are three options one could consider. You could respond to this as an armchair analyst, stay here and throw all the data at us, and make conjectures of who is wrong, who is responsible, which is quite easy to do. To be an armchair analyst and to analyze through the numbers and be on TV and talk, which is fine and fantastic. We need to know where we are. There's a need for analysis. I'm a stickler for analysis. You need to get the data, understand what is happening to you or to us. So, but we don't stop there. That is one response. An armchair analyst, just stay there and talk. Now, you could also respond as a significant stakeholder to say, I'm a stakeholder. I have people I'm employing. I have people that I'm working with. I have clients, and all of us are facing this situation together. I have people in my church. I have people who are dependent. I have family members. So you can take responsibility as a significant stakeholder to say, okay, what is my responsibility in the midst of all this? That could be a response. Now, the alternative is to say, this is time to get out of here. Get your visa and run. Japa syndrome. Now, I would not want to blame anyone that lives in Nigeria. Sincerely, it's not necessarily a bad time to live. However, just understand that you are responding, you are choosing, you are making a choice, and it is the choice you are choosing to make. And as people of God, we need to, of course, go to God to find out, is this what He wants us to do for such a time as this? Now, if that is what He wants you to do, of course, you should respond. Some of us must leave this country to do something outside and come back. Some will go and never come back. Some are going to be here and, be the solution. But it's up to us to ask ourselves, what really is our responsibility here? And I think the more nobler call or cause is to be a significant stakeholder. And of course, you might have to leave. Now, it's important to understand these options are our responses. Now, it's good to look at our history. As God's people, let's look at our history. So famines are in our history. Famines are common in our history. So that in the days of Abraham, days of Isaac, days of Jacob. In the days of Abraham went down to Egypt. So fleeing is not outside of our calling. But of course, he came back. But fleeing, like I said, is not bad. It's not outside of our frame of reference. So you might leave, but remember what you are responding to. If you are called to this nation, if you are leaving, you're going to come back, definitely. Well, Isaac was about to leave. God said, don't go, come back. So Isaac didn't leave. Jacob, in this case, Jacob is typified by Joseph. Now, Joseph was not the solution to the famine. So we see different kind of salvations in our history. We see a household salvation, like in the case of Isaac. There was a household salvation. In the case of Abraham also, by fleeing, there was a household salvation. We also see national salvation where an individual, by his efforts, in the case of Joseph, could save his people. Joseph saved Israel, but Joseph also saved the world, global salvation. So my point is that within our immediate history as God's people, there are levels of responses and there are levels of salvation. So it means that within these options, God can use you to effect His purpose and His will. Now, we cannot condemn the person that flees, cannot condemn the person that is providing household salvation, cannot condemn the person that is global service at the variegated wisdom of God. So God could use you and I, very differently. And you cannot say, I must save the world, I must save the nation. If that is not your calling and your responsibility, for you, it might just be to get out of here and get out of here fast, or for you, it might be to save your family, to provide a system that can cushion your immediate family, your nuclear family, or it might be your church family, it might be your business family, it might be your group. So either way, there's a salvation. There's a salvation, which is one point I would like to bring out, that there's a salvation in our history for times like this. And we must, engage that process of bringing about that salvation. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? That's really the purpose of this video, to ask you that question and to perhaps, stimulate you to go back to God and reflect and come up with decisions and strategies that would work. Now, the key points to notice are: one, you are not a victim. You are not a victim. Let nobody deceive you. You're not a victim. Yeah, you are experiencing something that is negative. That does not mean that you're a victim. A victim means that you can do nothing about your scenario. So just like if you get outside, the sun is hot, you go put an air conditioner, right? So do you say we are victims of the hot sun? No, you better say the sun is hot. The sun is hot is a reality. The sun is hot. It's a reality, but it is when you don't have a means to respond to that hot sun that you can become a victim. So you're not a victim. You are experiencing a adverse scenario. Two, to notice that there are people whose destinies will be influenced by your decisions. Note that your actions have consequences, not only for yourself, but for others. So we are responsible. If you are called to be a bishop in the marketplace, to be a business administration practitioner, there are people whose destinies are tied to your decisions. So you cannot act just for yourself, by yourself. So you know that God has given you certain responsibilities, certain burdens and concerns that you must respond to. So knowing that, you have to, weigh your decisions carefully, knowing that there are implications. So 3 point I think you should notice, that the glory of God is not dimmed and cannot be dimmed by this present darkness. In fact, we know that our heritage is always to shine within the context of a broader darkness. So this happens to be our national darkness at the moment. So what are you going to do about this? Very, very important. And I would like you to really take this question to heart. Now, not knowing this, there are things that, this is just my thought, that I think a nation can do, but you don't have to do it, you mustn't do it. But the key point to note from my meditations is that these are things that can influence the options that a state or a nation can engage. Of course, the immediate thing is to increase the crude oil exports, which is what government is trying to work on. But that is maybe not within your sphere of influence. The best you can do is to advocate for that, but you know that it is not within your sphere of influence. And it's important that we focus on things that are within our sphere of influence, because at the end of the day, you'll be judged by what you have capacity to do, not what you don't have capacity to do. So increasing crude oil export is a good consideration, and we expect and urge the government to get to that quickly, but it's not necessarily within the sphere of influence of you and I, but can advocate for that. Agro export, we need to really do better in agro. That can be within your sphere of influence. If you can do nothing but to work with farmers and encourage them to do better. Of course, security is a concern, but security is not in every place that we don't have security issues. So it's not in every place that we're having security issues. There are places that you can still farm, within the limitations of our challenges. Some of us, you have access to state governors, you could give them ideas and all that. We need to figure out how to grow our agricultural base and produce and export locally exportable commodities. We can do a lot about that, and you might be responsible. I would like you to engage that from the perspective that I say cause, because you might say it's not your concern and all that, but remember, the people who are going to starve are your family members and your cousins and relations in the village. Don't forget that. We are not too far from these problems. So what am I going to do about it? Should I sit down and condemn the government? My immediate family members are affected. Your church members, your parents, their grandmothers, their aunties and cousins are in the village. So we cannot turn a blind eye to say it's just about the government. We have a responsibility to export our cash crops like cocoa, cashew, sesame, ginger, soybeans. These are just in their raw forms. But we can even do better and process them. So my point is that if you engage the process of exportation now and processing and value addition, it is the work of God that you are doing. Just the way you fight demons, this is another demon. You can engage it with that sense of determination, knowing that what you are doing has implication not just for you but for others. The Bible says, if your brother is hungry, you come out and tell him, go be fed, God will bless you. What's that? So this is a time to ask yourself, what can I do? If you are up at level 1, maybe you could do 1,000. Not just to make more money, but to be a blessing, to help people earn dollars, to help Nigeria earn dollars, of course, help you earn dollars because you have dollar needs, help you earn dollars. Because if you are earning, think about it, if you are earning equivalent of, let's say 10 years ago, what you are earning, let's say you are earning 300,000 naira a month 10 years ago. In dollar terms, that should be about maybe that was $1 about 300. Let's just say it was $1,000. You earn $1,000, about 350,000 10 years ago. Let's say you are still earning that $1,000 now. That's 1.5 million naira terms. So my point is that if you can, assuming you had dollarified your earnings, let's say you're providing a service to a global community, even if your earnings had not increased in dollar terms, you'll be better off. So imagine if the bulk of us had products and services that we were exporting abroad, we will not be in this mess. Even if everybody's in this place, you will not be in the mess. I don't know if you understand. So being able to take personal responsibility to say, if I'm earning XYZ 10 years ago, how can I achieve this level of income today in dollar terms? That to me is how we should think. It will mean that we might do some drastic things in righteousness. It might mean that you might go abroad, but you're not going abroad simply because you want to escape. You want to set up systems that help you to peg your earnings in dollar terms, so that your family members, your cousins, your business partners, your clients, your staff can have a better life. And I believe that is the will of God. So we have to earn more and export more crude products, agriculture, better produce more. So another area I pointed out is that we need to, figure out how to, reduce the inflationary pressure on the food, the agricultural sector, public transportation, energy, health. Again, this may not be within your purview. It's for the public sector. You can, if you see them, you can talk to them if you are within that space. But for us, and we can focus more on production. And then apart from production and, both for crude material that are exportable and for, basic, industries, which I know is tough, is almost impossible in certain settings, but believe me, with this inflation pressure and all that devaluation of the naira, some industries have just become profitable. So if to become locally productive, some industries. So even if it's just to do some research, if that's all you can do, to do some research to find out some products that cannot be made in Nigeria because of the high price of the import value of those items, and you're able to share that information with others, that's massive, But my point, don't do nothing. Now, the last thing, which might be something that you can do, would be to education, because to be able to be this productive, we need to train people. So if all you do is to get 10 people together and start training them to be relevant globally, set up an incubation center, a hackathon, whatever, But my point, prayerfully go to God and say, Father, the fireman is here. What do you want me to do? What can I do? So by the time you search your heart, and look at some of the things that God has put in you, I believe something would come up. We'll spend 25 minutes already. I don't want to take much of your time, but it's not nutshell. You have the capacity to make outstanding contributions in this field. And I think that God requires it of all of us, that one way or the other, we should take responsibility. But when you can, when you have the wherewithal to make a difference, God is expecting you and I not to be indifferent or not to feel that we are victims, but to rise up to the occasion and make something worthwhile of this occasion. Thank you. God bless.